Hello, I'm Jelelle Awen, and this is the fourth video in my Deepen 2020 series. And maybe you took in the other 3 videos that I've done, and maybe this is your first, and that's okay. These can be, my sense is these can be standalone, or you can do them in sequence. So as I was feeling into what to do today, there were so many things, so many ideas swirling around, and even requests from people of various meditations they'd like to have me do and teachings. So I'm so open to that, by the way. If you want to leave a comment and let me know what you'd like me to do a video about and a meditation, that would be wonderful. My alchemy is often in response. So what I'm responding to today, what I feel to do this video about, is actually something that I've been experiencing a lot of in the last couple of months, and I'm feeling that probably many of you are as well. And that is a death and rebirth experience, cycle, transition. So this is something that I feel is on some level going on all the time in our various awakening processes. You know, something is dying, even as something is being reborn. And then there does seem to be times where it peaks, and there's then a whole lot of even life change that comes out of it. So sometimes it's subtle. What dies is maybe a belief system or a way of being, or an attachment that a part of us has, and then other times it's more abrupt or dramatic, we could say. Wherever you are on that spectrum of death and rebirth right now, there is still this ongoing experience of it that I want to acknowledge in this video. And I also want to provide a guided meditation that I've done in the past. I think I've done it in a group call and then another live that I did on Facebook. And I essentially call it Casket to Cradle. And what it acknowledges is the parts of us that at some point are pretty much dying to themselves. They are dying to the way that they have been, especially the 3D anchored parts. So I'll just talk about that for a moment. A 3D anchored part of us is a part of us that has really received a lot of conditioning from third dimensional reality. So more black and white, more fear-based, very much bought into the whole matrix, the 5 sense reality filtering. There is nothing else. You live, you work, you die. Oh, it sounds kind of sad just saying it. But this is the reality for many, many souls. There is nothing bigger. There is not a bigger purpose. This is the game. This is why you're here. And there isn't anything outside of that. So what I find in working with people over the years and in my own process is that our inner child, the essence of our inner child, is actually multidimensional and very emotional, as I talked about in my last video. And then what happens is that we become conditioned to 3D reality. We learn to orient our consciousness to this denser reality that I just described. And it happens over time, over layers that develop, that just shut down and close down slowly our access. And on a higher soul level, we choose this because we want to experience 3D and heal from it. So in the densest energies of third dimensional consciousness, there's such an opportunity for healing. It sounds counterintuitive, but it's like we want inertia. We want something to push against, because if we actually get then to an awakened place, if we actually heal the trauma that we experience, there's a lot more payoff for it. This is why I feel I try to reframe that actually the experience of 3D is not a prison that we're, sentenced to be here, but it's actually a soul's choice for growth that many, many souls want this opportunity. And especially the opportunity right now, which is to truly have a death and rebirth experience, to have a personal resurrection experience. So to go from this inner child, and I even felt this just yesterday in a session with a wonderful soul. Her inner child had so much access to imagination and what we call make-believe, which is actually our multi-dimensional capacity. So if you had, imaginary friends and you could take journeys away in your imagination, all of that is actually soul capacity. And we have that as children. We just innately have it, and we rely on it, actually. It's our survival until we're conditioned that we need to grow up and stop pretending and come into reality. And then some of us, of course, then have abuse and harm happen. So to stay in this magical wonder world, we can't, because our protectors, our inner protectors come in then. There's another layer that comes in, maybe one of the first, to protect us. So there's a layer then interfacing with reality, and that protector goes into learning mode of how it can protect and keep us safe. So there's another shutdown of our multi-dimensional gifts in that process. And then it seems as we get older, more and more parts of us are developed to be able to interface with 3D reality, and our multi-dimensional essence gets further and further away from us. Most people. I was kind of an exception to this in that I held very tightly to my multidimensionality, and I had a very lush and rich access to it up until, I actually never lost it. And I realize how rare that is now, and I also feel that's because I needed to be the bridge I am now for people to remember this essence. So I'm bringing this up because we're talking about death and rebirths, but what's actually dying is the layers, the conditioning that we received in 3D, and then these parts that form. We work in our SoulFullHeart process with what we call a 3D self. And often you can access your 3D self by feeling the part of you that does if you've had a long time job, for example, and it's more of a 3D based job, you probably have a part that's formed to do that job. Or being a mother can be part of the 3D self. And as you connect to that 3D self, it's actually the 3D self that dies. And I have done sessions with 3D selves dropped in, and they literally want to hold a funeral service for themselves, where they're done. They want to let go of the 3D world and the 3D consciousness that they've created. This often bisects with something like leaving a job or setting boundaries, that kind of thing. And the 3D self is finally able to just let go, and then be reborn into a higher dimensional self, if you will. So more of the fourth and fifth dimensional energies are then able to come in, and the inner child is remembered. So it's healing, healing the abuse experiences that cause those layers to come in, so that inner child can then basically be reborn into your consciousness again. So I tell people this often: inner child work is not just therapeutic. It's actually transmutational, and it's critical because it's that inner child energy that you're rebirthing. You're making it come alive again through connecting with it, and then it's a very critical energy going forward into ascension. It's actually your inner child that powers your multi-dimensional vehicle, which, to keep it simple, is just that access. that you used to have as a child. Some people shut it down very early, so they struggle to connect to it again. In our process, in sessions, we create that bridge again. We go right to that inner child essence. And then you can start to not just remember, but relive and re-embody and rebirth this child essence of you. So we could say what dies in a way is the false adult. Are these energies that can do 3D life, but they can be quite controlling around it, or anxious, and they can be tight, and so there's no flow for them. And this is often why the 3D self is so tired and honestly just wants to die, to be reborn into something, an energy that is more in the flow, that isn't so anxious, that can move with life, include the emotional body and the emotional reactions and digestions with life, rather than suppressing them or medicating them or trying to transcend them. And the other flow that happens is, again, the embracement of your inner child essence as something very crucial to you, that's precious, that is such a big part of your essence. Just like if you imagine having a child, if you're a mother or a father, they're probably very precious to you. That's what we're creating, a bridge back to feeling that preciousness and allowing that, again, that child essence to be reborn. So death and rebirth, I feel, this is an aspect of it. And then the divine brings us life challenges. It's either a challenge or a choice, depending on how aligned we are. If we experience it as a challenge, as a test, as a lesson from the divine, those are usually coming from fear and from experiences that our soul has had of being tested and punished by God. This was it's another form of conditioning. So that's maybe, I will do a video on that too. That's kind of the 4D death and rebirth process. This is more what I'm speaking of today, the 3D local, this life, death and rebirth process. And in this process, you still are wanting to connect as much as you can to a divine trust in all of this death and rebirth. So even in significant loss and shifts, you still feel held, and you feel trust that whatever is being lost, especially if it's on the outside, if it's a relationship or a previously beloved career or geography, and maybe that wasn't your choice consciously, that can be very difficult to surrender into that then and say, well, this must be for my good. This loss must be allowing something new to come in. More and more as you connect to these parts of you and they feel that, they start to trust more and more you, and they also start to trust the divine, then you really can navigate any life change, no matter how intense it is, with this grace and trust and surrendered feeling about it, that whatever is dying is offering the opportunity for a rebirth. And also that the only way we can experience a rebirth is with a death. Something has to give way. And I have felt in myself that there's less and less trauma reaction to death and rebirth cycles and more trust. So that's what we're wanting to head toward. And I hope today in the meditation I provide for you, whatever it is that you experience of this meditation, that you can also feel the trust that it's being held with and the love that is there for you holding this container. It's a very sacred alchemical process, death and rebirth. It's not a punishment or a test. It really shows too, often these cycles when they're peaking really allow us to see what we're made of and how strong we are actually, and what we can not only just survive, but what we can end up in thrival, where we can thrive in it. So let's go inward and see what happens. So go ahead and close your eyes. Bring your focus inward and begin to deepen your breath. You can even inhale and exhale out loud if you want to. And today, accompanying us, I'm seeing Dark Mother, who often is in a dark cloak. Her face is in shadow. She definitely has that energy of death and rebirth. So she's joining us today. And then I'm seeing Mother Mary, who has a white cloak on today, almost like they're the dark and the light. Both sides. And what we're going to tune into today is the part of you that is going through a death right now, a loss. The other piece of this that's so important is grief and allowing the grieving process. And that's what I'm seeing right now is a funeral. Let's tune into that. So feel and see who's at this funeral. Maybe it's interesting who isn't at this funeral. This is an honoring sacred space. So only those you trust most. And in the middle of the room is a casket. Actually, it just shifted to that we're outside. That's fine. Whichever you see. I see Dark Mother holding a service for this part of you that is ready to go. And her energy is of support, courage. She is with you through the fire walks, through the losses, through your tears. She is the hand that guides you forward. And then she opens the casket and inside is a part of you that is ready to die. Maybe they're not totally gone yet, they just are very, very tired. You can tune in the moment to what part is that? Do you see maybe your professional self in a suit? Do you see your mother self who's devotedly raised children, raising them? Do you see your protector? Maybe you just feel in this moment the tiredness or the grief, and the loss. Maybe it's all the things you've had to let go and say no to in your awakening. Whatever you need this sacred funeral for, go ahead and feel that in this moment. And I already see Mother Mary coming over and taking your hand, even if tears are still drying on your face. She's leading us into a tower, up a spiral staircase, and as you're going up the staircase, it's suddenly your heart is getting lighter. You can see light shining through and down the tower. Every step, you're having a feeling of rebirth. And maybe it's the part of you that was in the casket that's feeling this right now. Or it's another part of you. Your heart is starting to lighten, the layers beginning to dissolve off of you. Mary is smiling. And you reach a room at the top that's light and airy. And in the center of the room is a cradle. And inside of the cradle is your reborn, rebirthing essence. You may see your inner child in more of its healing state, like fresh new skin. Or maybe it's that part that died is being reborn without armor, without layers. Or you just see very bright light in the cradle. Connect with that energy in whatever way you feel to now. by holding it or loving it. You might even see that reborn light merging into your being. And you can take the time now, if you want, to just stay in this rebirth feeling, or with the death process, or moving back in between the two. But I'll complete for now with you, and you can open your eyes. Definitely using what we just set up there as a stage where you can go into any aspects of it that you need to go deeper into. And thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you soon.